Hello, my name is Jaime Diaz. This is my Camino de Santiago. Started the Camino by flying to Paris, France. From Paris, I got a train to Leon. I spent a night in Leon, and from there I got a train to Le Puy-en-Velay to start the Camino Le Puy. It took me about 30 days or a month to finish the Le Puy, and from there I started the Camino Francés. For those that might want to skip over to the Camino Francés, I'll put timestamps below. Below, I'll also have a list of all the different things that I took on the Camino. And as the video progresses, I'll more or less explain what I used all these different things for. I did my Camino alone, but I think as lots of people who have done the Camino before might tell you, that you're never really alone on the Camino. I started in August. August is a month that lots of people in France use as vacation time. I didn't know that before starting, but it was very nice. When you do the Camino Le Puy, it's beautiful, but a problem might be that a lot of the jeets, which are the albergues or hostels that you would stay in, they really only speak French there. I speak English and Spanish, but those weren't really much help. The good thing was that many of the people that I met on the Camino were bilingual in both French and English, so they helped me out with the translations. On the Camino Le Puy, I met two groups of people. Most of the people fell into the first group. Those were people that were French and would do the Camino maybe about a week at a time and continue the following year where they had stopped the year prior. The second group was people that wanted to do the entire Camino. And this was very interesting. A lot of people in Europe do the Camino from their home all the way to Santiago. Along the Camino, there's many places to stop and eat. It's one of the ones that we stopped at. We had some cheese and bread here. Here's one of the jeets that we stayed at. They call them jeets in France, but then when you go to the Spanish part, they call them albergues. All that an albergue is, it's just a hostel, but a hostel for pilgrims. What you just saw was a campsite. Lots of the pilgrims like to camp, so they'll have their tents, their sleeping bags with them, along with a little dry pad. It's really just up to whatever the pilgrim's preference is. I know that in parts of Spain it's not permitted to camp. It's very common on the French side of the Camino. If you're staying in an albergue, they'll almost always provide you with some breakfast. The breakfast will 99% of the time be bread, butter, and jam. Sometimes they would give you some pretty interesting jams. Here's some rhubarb jam that was pretty tasty. The host would also ask if you want some tea or coffee. I like coffee, so that's what I would do. One thing I thought was pretty interesting was that in certain parts of France, they'll drink coffee out of bowls. A lot of the hosts would also have a map. The idea is to leave a pin where you're from. So I'm from Brownsville, Texas. So I left my pin right here. Quickly to go back to the bowl of coffee that you just saw. What people were telling me was that you're supposed to dip your bread into your coffee. I'm not sure how true this is, but that's what I did. The albergues provide you with sheets. When you arrive, they give you the sheets and you put the sheets over the bed. And before you leave in the morning, they ask that you take them off and put them in the hamper. Some albergues wouldn't provide you with sheets. In these cases, you would have to use your sleeping liner. This is kind of like a very thin sleeping bag. You can find the link for that one below. Remember that this was during August, so it was a little bit hot, so you really didn't want something too thick, like a thick sleeping bag. Just wanted just something to just cover you up. At the night, it does cool down a little bit, but just keep in mind that there's no air conditioning in the albergues. This morning, after the traditional bread and coffee, it started to hail outside. We decided to start a little bit late this morning to just wait for the hail to stop. Also, this part of France is really flat, so we were a little bit concerned about the thunder. Luckily, the host had a kitten, so we stopped to play with the kitten to pass the time. This is the raincoats that you would put on. The raincoats should go over your backpack, but if they can't, just remember that if your backpack's not waterproof and your raincoat does not fit over it, you're going to need to pack a cover for your backpack. Now, to go over the Camino essentials, you're going to want to buy a Pilgrim passport and also your scallop shell. You can do this in any gift shop or cathedral that you see along the Camino. This could also just be a general traveling tip. When you're in France, stop in the tourist centers. Here we're going into one. They're great. Most of the people there speak multiple languages, and it's a good place to stop to ask what you should do in that particular area. So they always have great recommendations regarding museums, tours, or restaurants. This is also a good spot to get your Pilgrim passport stamped. So you're going to want to get at least 2 stamps per day, but I would like to get a stamp everywhere I went just because it's a good reminder of all the places that you visited. Go on your app store on your phone and look for a Camino de Santiago app. There's a lot of these, and they're very helpful because they let you know where there's jeets in your area, where you can eat, where you can stop to get water. So that's basically going to be your best friend on the Camino. Even if you don't speak French, I mean, you can Google Translate and talk to the people via WhatsApp. There's WhatsApp numbers for all the different cheats on these applications. Here we are in Obarak. Also, forgive my pronunciation, I'm trying my best. You might be familiar with the Obarak beef, but here we are eating aligot. This region is also known for its aligot, and aligot's kind of like a cheesy mashed potatoes. It's very good. And keeping in French style, for dessert, we had some cheese. In the Le Puy Camino, you're looking at probably paying between 40 to 50 euros per night at a jeep. With this comes included your breakfast and your dinner. There's not too many eating options along this Camino, so it's very nice that the jeets include dinner. If you want to try to save some money, you can try to get food at one of the towns. This might reduce the cost of the jeet a little bit, but it is worth noting that the food's phenomenal and that a lot of the food that you eat in the jeets comes from the local area, and a lot of the vegetables come from the local garden of that same jeet. So if you can afford it, it's worth eating in the jeets. Like I said, this area is known for its aligot. So when we arrived at this town, the firefighters were doing an aligot party. Here they are serving the aligot. It's known for being very stringy or stretchy, so you can kind of see when they serve it how they stretch it out. And at night, they had a very fun party with some live music. It's a great time. Just got to remember to get back to your G early. Some of them do close around midnight. And also, the next day is a long day of walking, like most days on the Camino. Since my Camino lasted about 2 months, they advised me to take the first 10 days to 2 weeks very easy. That meant walking anywhere between 20 to 25 kilometers per day. Just for reference, most people walk around 4 to 5 kilometers per hour. So that means that we would be walking between 4 to 6 hours per day. So if you start your day at 8 in the morning, you might be walking till about 1 or 2, maybe 3 if you take many snack breaks. This is pretty good to let your feet get used to the walking and to kind of build a resistance against any blisters. What I did is I wore 2 socks. So I wore a very thin liner, and then over my liner, I wore a merino wool sock. Here is one of the breaks that we took. You have to love having beer at 11:55 a.m. Very normal on the Camino. And we had some plum cake. The plums came from that tree over there. Getting back to what I was saying about merino wool. Merino wool is great because it's antibacterial, so you could wear it a few days before it starts to smell bad. My shirts, underwear, and socks were all merino wool. It does cost a little bit more money, but it's definitely worth it. Also remember to buy 100% merino. This here is a GR65 marker. That's the marker that you follow while doing the Camino Le Puy. During the break, you might have noticed that I had my clothes laid out on the table. Whenever you arrive at your jeets, you always shower and wash your clothes. The earlier you get to the jeet, the more time you have to hang your clothes and let it dry. Typically, you'll put your clothes in before nighttime because if not, the dew could accumulate on your clothing and your clothes will end up more wet in the morning than it was at night before you went to bed. Since my clothes didn't dry overnight, I had to hang it on my backpack. So by the time we took our break, my clothes was dry, and I was just putting it away. Here I am refilling my camelback. Most people in the Camino are split between either using a camelback or between using a water bottle. The benefit in using a camelback is that it's very easy to drink from it, since you have the sling that hangs off your backpack. The bad parts of the camelback end up being that they can be heavy, since they can hold a lot of water. They're hard to clean, and they're hard to refill. A bottle of water is much easier to refill. It's also a lot easier to clean. Most water bottles will hold about a liter of water, which should be enough between refill stations. Just depends on your own personal preference. The big problem with a bottle of water is that most people put them in their water bottle pouch on their backpack. This makes it a little bit harder for them to grab their water bottle, so it could make them a little more prone to dehydration. Most of the issues, especially tendonitis and cramps, you could avoid this with just staying hydrated. Regarding restrooms, there are some public spots that you can go to. Usually you have to wait till the next town, or if you don't mind, you can always just go to the side of the Camino, find some bushes, and most people are pretty respectful. Another thing that's very helpful to have on the Camino is plenty of carabiners on your backpack. You can always hang stuff like your wet clothes from the night before, your water bottle, or anything else you might need. For example, I would put my soap in a quick dry soap pouch, and I would just hang it off my backpack with a carabiner. By the time that I would get to the next town, the pouch would somehow dry the soap. It's very convenient. I'll include a link to it below. Now to go over what exactly I took for clothes on the Camino. So I had two changes of clothes and what I had on. So this worked out to being 3 silk sock liners, 3 merino wool socks, 3 merino wool underwears, 1 merino wool hoodie, 3 merino wool shirts, 1 lightweight jogger. After I would shower in the Jeets, I would usually put that on. 2 pairs of shorts, and I would put all this inside my all-purpose dry bag. The point in putting it inside the dry bag is that once I had all my clothes in there, I would then try to compress it, take all the air out of there, and to have it be as compact as possible for when I put it inside my backpack. Inside the dry bag, I would also put my sleeping bag liner. Here's one of the churches that we stopped at. Take advantage that on the French Camino, all churches are open and they're all free. The Camino de Compostela is a pilgrimage to the tomb site of St. James the Apostle. For this reason, it's important to keep with the historical and religious tradition of the Camino and to try your best to stop at the different churches. Besides, this is also a great opportunity to stop and reflect and ask yourself why you are doing the Camino. On the Camino, you are always saying hello and goodbye, sometimes even to the same people and more than once. Here in Espalion, while getting into town, I saw some friends that I had met 3 days prior, said goodbye to them, thought I would probably never see them again. As I entered town and saw them, they told me they were going to get in the river. I decided to get in. The moment my skin touched the water, I realized it's absolutely freezing. So I just got in and out. But hey, I can say I got in the river. Typically, it wouldn't be good to do this because you do want to try to keep your feet dry. This helps avoid blisters. Since I was already in town, I figured I could do it and then just put my sandals on, walk into town. So one more thing you need to pack. You need to pack some lightweight sandals that you'll be using once you get into town. Once I arrived at the jeep, they treated us to some syrup with water. It's pretty tasty. It's just water with this syrup that comes in different flavors. It's a nice refresher after a long day's walk. After the day's walk, I wanted to go find a bar and have a beer, but the people also suggested that instead of doing that, we look for a grocery store and we buy some beers and some snacks and take them by the river. So that's what we did. Here's a selection of beers that they had. And after lots of thought, I decided to go with this one. Must say it was pretty good. Here we are drinking it by the river. It's a very nice view and a much needed refresher. Now we go to the jeep. This is what the bunk beds look like. This is us at the dinner. At the dinner we sang Ultereda. It's a Pilgrim song. I'll include a link to that below. This is the owner of the jeep. He played the accordion for us. After dinner, we decided to go to the pharmacy. Here I bought some Tiger Balm. It was $2. It was very nice. It was very refreshing. Now we go to the dinner. This is us at the dinner. At the dinner we sang Ultereda. It's a Pilgrim song. I'll include a link to that below. This is the owner of the jeep. He played the accordion for us. I also bought some anti-chafe cream because I needed it. It's always good whenever you're in these bigger towns to stop and go to the pharmacy and buy anything that you might need. Typically between towns, you won't have the opportunity to buy things, so whenever you can, take advantage. To wrap up the night, we went to a bar, and I finally had my beer. These were some of the people that I had met along the Camino. The Camino is beautiful, but definitely the people are what really makes the experience special. This here is lamb's wool. It's extremely useful for preventing blisters. So any hotspot that you feel a blister might be forming, you put some lamb's wool there, and the lamb's wool helps reduce friction, helps prevent getting that blister. It works great. There's a link for that below. This is one of the breakfasts that we actually didn't have, just bread and jam, so that's pretty exciting. As we made our way out of Espalion, they had a really neat farmer's market. You can see some of the items that were for sale there. So to keep going over the things that were in my backpack, here are some optional items. You can bring some trail trekking poles. I thought these were very useful. These are the poles that you use to walk. The nice part about these poles is that they help get some of the weight off your legs and onto your arms and core. They also do help a lot with accidental slips and falls. There's a couple times that I almost fell, but because I had the pole there, it helped me stay upright. They also really help when you're climbing up or down hills. More optional items are like paper soap. You can use this if you go to the restroom and you want to wash your hands, but you could also bring things like hand sanitizer. Lightweight spork. This is for eating food. I had bought one out of titanium, completely optional. Trekking pole tips. These are going to wear out on you, as you can see in the video above. It's good to have some spares. Lightweight day pack. Whenever you arrive at your hostel or jeet, you typically leave your bag there as you go and explore the city. The problem is that you're leaving there all your money, your passport, all your valuables. So it's important that you have some place to put these valuables and take them with you when you do leave. Not saying that people are going to steal, but it might happen. Here I suggest packing some lightweight dry pack just to be able to carry your valuables with you when you leave the jeet or hostel. A clothesline. Like I said, during the night, usually put your clothes inside just because you don't want the dew to form on your clothing overnight and make it even more wet. So it's nice that if your clothes doesn't dry during the day, you can hang the clothesline around your bunk bed and dry your clothes as you sleep. Lastly, an inflatable pillow. There's only a few jeeps that didn't actually provide us pillows. On one occasion, we got to the jeep a little bit late and there was no beds available. So they were able to accommodate, but we ended up sleeping on the floor. And for times like this, it's very nice to be able to have an inflatable pillow, but it is extra weight. So unless you don't mind carrying a couple extra ounces, I would consider just leaving that at home. You might have already noticed from the video that the Camino is scattered with a bunch of fruit trees. Here's a pear. I think before this you might have seen some blackberries. Here I am at the jeep. Got here a little bit early. The host had left out some syrup and some water. Served myself a glass. There you can really see that sweet nectar flow. I do kind of miss that. It was pretty tasty. Yum. And since I had some spare time, I sat down and started writing some cards to my friends and family. This is another good idea of what to buy when you're in a big city. Buy some postcards and some international stamps. It's the jeep that we stayed at that night. It's a pretty neat jeep. So this is a mobile home. Right there you have a sofa, the kitchenette. Here's the room. Right through that door is the restroom. Here you can see the sleeping liner, the pillows that they provide. Here's the kitchen. And there's a receptacle that they provide you to wash your clothing in. Once you're done washing it, you come out here and you hang it there by the rail. This was us in the dinner. The food was incredible. At the end of the dinner, the owner of the jeep came out and he brought us his interpretation of the Tartara de Santiago. It's like a Spanish almond cake. As you can see, it's more of a chocolate cake. And there's some tea that he brought us as well. This is what the jeep looked like at night. It was beautiful. They had some very nice Christmas lights hanging up, different colors. At night, we try to find some shooting stars. I couldn't find any. Here's the next morning. This was some breakfast. We put some butter on the table, and the cat was really enjoying that. As you can see, butter, bread, coffee. The breakfast of champions. At least on the Camino. Now it's time that we talk about some shoes. What shoes should you take on the Camino? I guess here, similar to the water bottle versus camelback debate. So the first group is of people that think you should take some waterproof or Gore-Tex trail shoes. The benefit in trail shoes is that they have a really rugged sole. The waterproofing is also a blessing and a curse. Sure, they might not get wet as easy, but if they do get wet, they're going to stay wet for a very long time. The other issue is that they get way hotter than just normal running shoes. All this heat will then make your foot sweat, and all that sweat will make your foot very moist, and that moisture will then cause blisters. I'm just saying this to warn you, because nothing will ruin your Camino faster than a big blister. The other group is a camp that I fall into. I think you should take just normal running shoes. Why? Because they breathe really well. Sure, they might get wet very easily, but they also dry very fast. The only drawback is that they will wear out on you fast. But in reality, if you're not walking for more than a month, it shouldn't be a big issue. Along the Camino, you'll find these places where pilgrims have stopped to put stones. The stones are there to commemorate how every Camino is unique, same as every stone is unique. So everybody places a stone to commemorate their own journey. This is another cheat that we arrived to. As you can see, it's very nice, good accommodations. Got there, I was pretty hungry, so I asked the owner if there was any food available. They were able to prepare something quick for me. Here's a cathedral in Conch. The day that we arrived, there is a pilgrim's blessing. This is us at the pilgrim's blessing. There'll be a lot of pilgrim's blessings throughout the Camino. Here, this is us ringing the bell to let the town know that we are leaving. Now let's talk your toiletry bag. So it's pretty important. Like I said, whenever you get to your jeet, the first thing you'll do is you'll usually shower. So you want a good toiletry bag that has a nice hanger on it, so you could take it with you into the shower, hang it. Regarding what kind of soap you'll use, most people I met on the Camino would use the bar of soap that they use to clean their clothes as well. You could take some liquid soap, just consider that this will add a lot of weight to your bag. Seeing there is an orientation map. They're really cool. So basically whatever you look at on the map will be directly in front of you. Here we stopped. We're not smokers, so we got to get that out of the way. We like Orange Gino. This jeep that we stayed in had a pool. It's very nice. This is the first pool that we got in probably about 3 weeks. Nice refresher. The jeep also had a little garden. See the garden down there. The food that we had for dinner that night actually came from there. Here's a beautiful lake that we were crossing. Beautiful cathedral. Here you can see the passport and the stamps. Yeah, I put a stamp on myself. There you can see a framing of all these different passports with all these different stamps. Going back to what I was saying about the toiletries, you're also going to want to find a good towel, something that's light and that dries very quickly. You can see the one that I used below. Here in Figeac, we ended up staying in a covenant. These covenants are organized by the Catholic Church. How they work is they work based off donations. So you stay, and if you can, you leave something. Typically, they ask that you leave a donation of about 20 euros. However, the idea is to be able to provide a place to stay to pilgrims who might be traveling with no money. There's other places called donativos, and these are donation-based albergues or jeets. Same principle as the covenants, it's just that they're not affiliated with any religious group. The Camino de Santiago is supposed to be a religious pilgrimage, so the idea of a donativo is also to subsidize the stay for someone who might not be able to afford it. You should really consider staying in a donativo or a covenant, and if you can, please leave them a donation. This brings up an important point about planning. Some pilgrims try to plan every day. This means that they have a city in mind that they're going to stay in, and they already have their jeet or albergue pre-booked. This is nice. The only problem with doing it this way is that if you find a nice town that you like, or maybe if you get tired a little bit before the city you're planning on going to, you can't stop. You have to keep going. If you stop, it could throw off your booking schedule. You could also just get a taxi. It depends on how you feel about doing that. Some pilgrims don't like to do taxis, but it is a good way to catch up if you get a little bit behind. The way that I did it, we would just walk until we found a nice town or until we got tired, and we would stay there for the night. This wasn't always possible. There was points in the Camino that it got way too busy, and whenever we would notice that we would have a hard time booking a place, we would start booking maybe 2 days in advance. Just try to avoid those problems. But if you can, and you have the time, I think it's nice to just not have anything booked and to just take it day by day. Here in the Camino, we got some rain. You can see some of the backpack covers that my friends had. If your backpack's not waterproof, you're going to want to pack one of these covers. Even if you bring a waterproof poncho or waterproof jacket, sometimes it's just drizzling, so you want to keep your bag dry. You don't want to put the poncho on because the poncho just gets very hot and steamy. So just remember, if your backpack's not waterproof, remember to pack a bag cover. On this day when we arrived at Spagnac, we got to this very nice old monastery. We wanted to stay there, but it was completely booked. This is when things started to get a little bit congested on the Camino. We had to add another 4 kilometers to get over this mountain to make it to the next town over. Here we were able to find a place to stay. So like I said, sometimes you might have to walk a little bit more if you don't have your albergues pre-booked. I'm not complaining. It was a very nice detour. Got to see these old fountains. But I do remember that since we weren't planning for the detour, we all did run out of water. Here you can see an ancient castle. It was built into the mountain. There you can see my friends Anaik and Olivier. Walked with Anaik for about 2 weeks, and I walked with Olivier for almost a month and a half, almost all the way to Santiago. When I arrived to the jeet, it was kind of a vegan hippie place, so they made me some salad. The next morning, we had booked 2 days of kayaking, so we rented 2 single kayaks and 1 double. Here we met up with another friend that we had separated from the Camino a couple days prior. As you can see, it was phenomenal. The views, the water. There's a slight drizzle that day. You can see that we had these barrels in the back of the kayak with the red lids. That's where you would put all of your belongings. The kayak company would provide you with the service to take your backpack to the next town, but you could put whatever you might need for that day into the barrels. The single kayak was a lot of fun. The double required a little more coordination, so there I am with Anaik, kind of having a hard time riding the tandem. When we got to the next town, they had another farmer's market. We also took advantage to buy some snacks for the next day. So here we are. We bought a baguette. I think it was a pate baguette, if I remember correctly. And here we are, day 2 of kayaking. I think the first day was about 15 kilometers. I think this one was about 20. Here you can see the little slides that they had to help us get around the waterfalls. I think a couple of us flipped over doing this. It's a lot of fun. See how still the water is. The kayaking was almost more tiring than the walking. I mean, a 15-kilometer day, that's maybe about 4 or 5 hours walking. And it felt like a whole lot more than that on the kayak. Here you can really appreciate how glassy the water looked in the morning. It's almost like a mirror, the way you could see that bridge shining off it. Here's another one of those ramps. Here I stopped to take a break. I decided to stack some rocks, or at least contribute towards the Pilgrim stacking of the rocks. So right after my break, we decided to stop for lunch. So here's us in lunch. This is us when we arrived. We arrived at this kind of stony, pebbled beach. That day we stayed in this jeep that was a horse ranch. So there was people horseback riding down by the stable. Thought this was a super cool furnace in the middle of the kitchen. The idea is that you burn whatever leftovers you have, and that gives you your central heating. It's what the common space looked like. The rooms were upstairs. From here, we walked to a town called St. Creek. Hope I said that correct. It has to be probably one of the most beautiful towns in all of France. It's built into this mountainside. You can look at the architecture. It's incredible. Here you have another orientation map. I think those are so cool. Kind of wish that they were more popular. So what this translates to is leave a gift, take a gift. I wish I could say I got pretty good at French after a month, but nope. This is just plain old Google Translate. From here, we decided to go and see some stone carvings, a bit of a detour. There you can see that X. That X means that you're going off the Camino. But definitely don't be afraid to go off the Camino sometimes. On this river, they had some Captain Jack Sparrow-inspired expeditions. Here were the stone carvings. Lastly, there you can see a man fishing. I hope he caught plenty of fish. Finally, we arrived at Caro. There you can see the cathedral. This is more or less the midpoint on the Camino Le Puy. This means we're just over 300 kilometers from Saint-Jean-le-Port. I never thought about doing this, but I thought it was super cool. I'm sure most of you have. But you can just buy natural flavored yogurt and mix in jam with it, and you turn it into whatever flavor you like. I love that. Since Caro is a big town, here I bought some new tips, sewing kit, and nail clippers. I'm sure you can imagine what I use the tips and the nail clippers for, and I'll explain a little bit what exactly I use the sewing kit for. But get ready for a Camino hack. This is what the view was like as we left Caro. You can see here why the sticks might be a little bit necessary. You are walking up some pretty steep hills and down some pretty steep ones as well. Even if you don't use them, you could always put them on your backpack. They also don't weigh a whole lot. When we arrived in Mongkok, there was a carnival slash barbecue slash party going on. You can see it. Did kind of keep us awake at night. Here's a map of the Camino. You can see all the different routes that there is to Santiago. So be creative. Choose one that you might like. Here's my clothes. Didn't dry the night before, so I had to hang it from my backpack the next morning so it could dry as I walked. Here we walk through some fields of lavender. There in that barn, there's some sheep. Here's what looked like a duck farm, I think for foie gras. So these things, the Mondial Relay, it's a thing for people within Europe that you can use to send packages. So whoever sends you the package would basically get a locker number and a code. They would pass it on to you, so you'd be able to then go open up the locker and get whatever they're sending. Only problem is that it only works for shipments within Europe. These things are really interesting. These are pigeon houses. So your pigeons obviously go inside. There's a mesh underneath that allows the fecal matter to go through. So that's the manure. You can pick up the manure and then use it for your agriculture. Here there's a stop that you could get a melon, leave a small donation. So they told me you want a soft tip and a soft base. That's how you know that's ripe. There we are. And then you can see that just over there is where the melons grew. It's pretty neat. Fresh melons. Here we had a stop. We had some bread with goat cheese that we bought in the morning, some salami, and obviously the melon that we had picked up. Also some cherry tomatoes. This is us when we arrived at the monastery. I think we walked around 45 kilometers this day, so we were pretty happy to get there. Basically arrived there and put tiger balm everywhere on our body. Believe it or not, that stuff actually does work really good. Another 10 out of 10. Here we are leaving Mosaic the next day. Here's one of the nuclear reactors that France has. By the side of the street, we found a fruit seller here. They were selling their fruit for €1.50 a kilo. Of course, we stopped. That's what they had. Here in this town, they had a film festival. I think it's pronounced Auvilliard. It's my best try. Oh, and there is that nuclear reactor again. Here's a counter. It says see how many pilgrims pass every day. Here's this quote that you'll see a couple of times throughout the Camino. The quote goes, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children." And it was said by Anton de Saint-Exupéry. As you arrive to this town, they have two pilgrim shoes hanging on the wall. There's a church. I really like the shade of blue that they use for this paneling. The following day, we stayed in a castle. So the castle was this church. This church, the roof had collapsed. Also the side wall. See how thick that side wall is. Here you can see the Chateau de Flarmens. Believe it or not, this only costs 40 euros a night to stay here. It's open for pilgrims. So this family bought it 3 generations ago, and they've been fixing it ever since. I think they've been fixing it for over 70 years. Those are the rooms right there. The castle is open to the public. If you'd like to help them rehabilitate it, I put a donation link in the bottom. So now for a quick tour of the castle. I'll fast forward this bit right here. Had a lot of fun learning how to do videos. You can tell I had a lot of fun doing this part right here. So there in the background, you can see the church that had the collapsed ceiling and the sidewall. So that's what I use the sewing kit for. What you want to do is you want to disinfect the needle. If you have any small blister, you want to run a string through it. The string allows the liquid to flow out of your blister and hopefully to dry it out. Here's a model of the castle. They're currently working on, when we stayed there, was a roof. There's a sink of the room that we stayed in. That's how you pour the water out of the sink. I just thought this was a really cool door locking mechanism, so I took a video. And then look, check out this seat. It's a seat that doubles as a toilet. I wish I had one like this back home. Here's the owner of the castle, talking about the restoration and the whole process. If you want to help with the restoration, there's a donation link down below. This is a fig tree that we found. It had the ripest figs I've ever had in my entire life. They were great. Here in Lecture, we went to an antique shop. Here are some old books. So those books there are supposed to be what people from Texas are like. I can attest. Yes. Here's some more antiques. I really wish I could have bought one of the statues. The only problem is that it would have been too much weight for my backpack, but it would look so cool back in Brownsville, Texas. These were the baths. I wish we would have been able to go, but it would have blown out the budget. This is Flock. Flock's a mixture of wine and Armagnac. It's local to the region. Here's a pretty tall blind of some kind. Right here they were selling some prunes. Stopped to get some. Here they are on the trees. Here's some beehives. I was told these are linden trees, and those are some bees pollinating the flowers. Here's a toy for kids in a park. And there's some fried duck. So you can see the view from the toy. Here we bought some focaccia bread. There you can see the prices, get an idea. And there's the focaccia and the beer. Here's a La Romouille Cathedral. The whole town is scattered with these statues of cats. It's supposed to commemorate them. There's a story that goes that a cat saved this town during the plague, since the cats ate all the rats. Here's the town of Condon. This town does homage to the Three Musketeers. Never found out why. You can see the cathedral, and they're the Musketeers. Typically in the Jeets, you leave your shoes outside, and they give you a container, like the one you see right there. So what you do is you leave your bag outside, and you put whatever you want to take up to your room into that container. The idea is to stop bed bugs from spreading. So the first thing you want to do when you get to the Jeet is always inspect the bed for any bugs. Also, you never put your backpack on your bed. This is because you don't want bugs going from your backpack to the bed, or vice versa. This Jeet made us this banana bread using a solar oven. This had to have been probably the nicest pilgrim stop. You can see all the things that you can get. They had syrup, some candies, cups. There's some basic information on that pamphlet board up there. Here's a donation box. You can leave whatever you don't want to carry anymore. The idea is that if any pilgrim needs anything from that box, they can just take it. So you're kind of gifting it forward. Here's a trash can or recycling bin, and up there's where you would leave the glass. There are the instructions on how to use that, for those that might not know. And here's a fridge. You can basically grab whatever you need and just leave a donation. This was a cheat that we stayed in. Here you can really see how the wall's structured. See how it's kind of these wood pillars. They put some kind of dirt with straw in between. You also see this with brick instead of the wooden straw. That costs a little bit more. Here's the room and the bed. The next day we walked through lots of vineyards. Here's Saint Mont. The farmers had a protest in France a while ago and they flipped all the signs upside down. That's why you see that. So as we arrived at this town, we went to the tourist center to get our stamp and to ask what we should do. There they had a scale. The idea is for your bag not to weigh more than 20% of your body weight. Mine weighed 14 pounds. Olivier's weighed 16 pounds. I'm about 150 pounds. The idea is for it not to weigh more than 20% of your body weight. That means that I was good. Olivier weighed a lot more than me. Maybe not a lot more, but more than me. So he was probably good too. We stopped at the center to buy some snacks. Those tomatoes look beautiful. And on our way out, we need to get some water, so we stopped in the public restrooms, which I thought was weird, but Olivier said it was normal. And there we are drinking restroom water. Yum. As we made our way out of town, we finally saw this marker. We had less than 1,000 kilometers to Santiago. Here we stopped for a beer, and the baker invited us to the back to go see the bread making process. There you can see the flour, the industrial mixer, some of the logs that he uses for the oven, the beer, and his bread. Here's a picture of how many people finish the Camino each year. See, that's about 500,000. Here there was a coffee machine. You leave a small donation, €1. Today we're in a little bit of a hurry, so we decided to have lunch on the go. I think that's another pate sandwich. Here's a book exchange. Only one problem, all the books are in French. These trees here on the Camino, they're planted for pilgrims. The idea is that you pick fruits. There wasn't any fruits on the trees, but one of the homeowners had left some fruits on their front steps. Here I got a fig. I'm pretty sure these geese are for foie gras, but I liked them. They're pretty friendly, so I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for them. Here we stopped for lunch. I bought some head cheese. Olivier told me it was very good, so I figured I'd try it. There's my spork. It was good, but it was about a pound. And I gotta say, a pound of head cheese might just be too much head cheese. We're still in Basque country, so you can see some Basque writing. Here we stop for a coffee break. They say that coffee in a nice mug always tastes better. Maybe not my mug, but that was a very pretty mug to the right. Without a doubt, the best pilgrim snack is hard-boiled eggs. If you see some for sale, buy a couple of them. Just remember that when you get to where you're staying for the night, put them in the fridge so they don't go bad. The main benefit in the hard-boiled eggs is that the shell itself is a container. So just throw them in your bag, it's no problem. Here you got a pretty interesting rest site. There's many good spots to stop and meditate like this one, all along the Camino. Here you can see some very nice Basque houses. While on the Camino, I really enjoyed asking pilgrims why they were doing the Camino. Hearing their answer would kind of help me better identify why I was doing it. A lot of what they would say would resonate with me. This is the most French thing ever. In France, they have vending machines for baguettes. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty jealous. This night we stayed in the town of Navarrés. The whole town is like a fortress. You can see the walls. Here's a local hotel. On the day we arrived, they had a pilgrim's blessing, so we went to that in this church here. Here's a public notary. On our way out of the town, they had these statues that point in the way of Santiago, so we followed their lead. After almost a full month of walking, we finally got our first view of the Pyrenees. It's one of those moments that you think to yourself, I'm so close, yet so far. Here you can see some more Basque writing. I can't tell you why so many birds were flying overhead, but we saw it as a positive sign that we were getting close. I remember as we left Navarrés, we didn't have any snacks with us. We just thought that we'd be able to find a place to eat somewhere along the way. However, that day we ended up walking close to 40 kilometers. There's absolutely no place to eat between there and our hostel. So try to always have at least some snacks with you. We stayed in this jeep this night. I recommend this jeep a lot. Here's a host serving us some sidra, some cider. She was actually a pilgrim at one point, and she ended up buying a jeep, becoming a host. Here you can see we're getting much closer to the Pyrenees. Also, I apologize for using the word jeet and albergues interchangeably. It depends on which country you are, on what word they use, but it's really the same thing. Here you could really appreciate the Basque architecture and the Basque colors. Time for a coffee break. Some more energy, we kept going. Here, this is a local beer brand. There's a church. You can tell that we're in Basque country now. And time for the best Camino snack, some hard-boiled eggs. You can tell I'm a big fan. So what you're seeing here is our last day on the Camino Le Puy. This Camino was about 750 kilometers and took about 30 days to complete. Here you can see us arriving in Saint-Jean-le-Port. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Lots of people start the Camino from this town. Here you can either go north and do the Camino del Norte, or you can continue going straight to the west and do the Camino Francés, which is the one that I did. You can tell that there's a lot of tourists in this town. Lots of people are starting their Camino from here. Here we're having our first celebration beer. It's also a very nice town to just go and visit. I gotta say, people definitely do notice that you've been on the Camino for a while. And if they don't notice it, they smell it. Here this is cream. So I had some, considering that we're in Basque country, and it's very good. There you can all see my sandals. Whenever I would arrive at a new town, I'll be looking forward to just taking my shoes off, putting those bad boys on. Here's a Pilgrim office. Here's where you could buy your Pilgrim passport. You can also buy other things like your scallop shell. Here's our second celebration beer. Here's a church. This is where pilgrims go to get their pilgrim blessing before starting the Camino. Here we are going to the Pilgrim's Mass. It's our first day on the Camino Francés. When we started, it was very foggy. The first day we climbed the Pyrenees, and then we have to descend down to Roncesvalles. Here you can see that the new markers are completely different. We're no longer following the GR track. Before getting to the top, we stopped to get a snack. Here we got some coffee and some bread. You can call this our second breakfast. You can also book the donkey service here. It's a service that carries your backpack for you. Just because of the altitude they need to climb, lots of people might opt to have their backpack carried for them. One of the nicest things about this part of the Camino was looking at all the horses. You can see them. They're huge. The weather this day was very bad, and as it got later in the day, it only got worse. Here it is, it's raining. It also got very cold. Here you can see this marker. We're only 765 kilometers from Santiago. You can also see the rain. This is just at the peak of the Pyrenees. Typically it's very nice. You have a great view, but that wasn't the case. This will look like after the rain. Completely soaked. Very cold. But we made it. Now I'm just trying to hurry to get to the albergues and Roncesvalles to have a nice shower and put on some dry clothes. Little did I know that a lot of the albergues don't open until 2. This was a case here, so we had to wait for a bit to wait for it to open up. Here you can see the new markers again. It looks very different than the GR markers. Here we take the bridge. You can see that below the bridge it's completely flooded. While we waited for the albergue to open up, we stopped to get some beer and tortilla española. The day that we stopped to drink the restroom water, we also bought some Armagnac. So considering that we survived the storm at the Pyrenees, we decided to open it up and give it a try. Here's the albergues in Roncesvalles. There's over 100 people that sleep here. There you can see my clothes drying on my bunk bed, and there are the bed covers. It's typically what we can expect in the albergues. Here's a breakfast. I wouldn't really recommend that albergues, to be honest. If you're willing to walk another 3 kilometers to the next town, there's some nice places to stay over there. Here we can look back and see the other side of the Pyrenees. Also, there's a lot more people on the Camino once you get to the Camino Francés. The Camino Le Puy is not very busy, especially the closer you get to Saint Jean. Here's another spot that we stopped to get some food. The Camino Francés, you're going to find a lot more spots to get food. It's a pretty cool rock formation that we walked on. And a forest. Here we are in another town. Very nice bridge. Nice lake. Here's a man feeding some baguettes to his horses. They look hungry. Here we arrived in Zabadica. Zabadica, we stayed in the Albergue Parroquial. It's very nice. It was next to this 13th century church. Here they shared with us the Beatitudes of the Pilgrim and also a parable for El Camino. I'll take time to read those right now. First, the Beatitudes of the Pilgrim. 1. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you discover that the road opens your eyes to the unseen. 2. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if what concerns you most is not getting there, but getting there with others. 3. Blessed are you, pilgrim, when you contemplate the road and discover it's full of names and dawns. 4. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if your backpack is empty of things and your heart does not know where to hang on to so many emotions. 5. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you discover that one step back to help another is worth more than 100 steps forward without looking at your side. 6. Blessed are you, pilgrim, when you lack words to express your gratitude for all that surprises you at every turn of the road. 7. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you make your way a life and your life a journey, in search of the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. 8. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if on your way to meet yourself you give yourself time without haste, so as to not neglect your heart. 9. Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you discover that the road has much more to do with silence, and silence with prayer, and prayer with the encounter of God, of love, who awaits you. 10. Blessed are you, pilgrim, for you will discover that the true journey begins when it ends. Before reading the parable of the Camino, I just wanted to give some context on what you just saw of the video. So you might have seen me in a sporting goods store. That was a store called Decathlon. They had a really cool checkout method that you just put whatever you're buying inside the register, and it automatically registers whatever you're buying, adds that to your cart. I thought it was a really cool way to check out. Come on, let's get on it, USA. Here we are finally in Basque Country. Here you can see a place you can stop for some food. If you get anything, just leave a donation. So this was definitely one of the most memorable spots of the Camino. Right now we're walking to the wine fountain. It's like a water fountain, but it gives you wine instead of water. Here I am pouring it. I have to build up pressure, so you have to kind of do it back and forth, little handle. And taste test. Pretty good. 10 out of 10. Now to continue with the parable. El Camino. The journey makes you a pilgrim, because the way to Santiago is not the only track to be walked in order to get somewhere, nor it is a test to reach any reward. El Camino de Santiago is a parable and a reality all at the same time, because it is done both within and outside in specific time that it takes to walk each stage, and along the entire life, if you allow the Camino to inhabit you, to transform you, and to make you a pilgrim. The Camino makes you simpler, because the lighter your backpack, the less strain to your back, and the more you will experience how little you need to be alive. The Camino makes you a brother, a sister, whatever you have, you must be ready to share, because even if you start out on your own, you will meet companions. The Camino breeds about community that greets the others, that takes interest in how the walk is going for others, that talks and shares with others. The Camino makes demands on you. You must get up even before the sun, in spite of tiredness and blisters. You must walk in the darkness of night while dawn is glowing. You must just get the rest that will keep you going. The Camino calls you to contemplate, to be amazed, to welcome, to interiorize, to stop, to quiet, to listen to admire, to bless nature, our companions on the journey, our own selves, God. In Zadika, when we sat down to have dinner, they had made us a soup made out of vegetables and rice. One of the nuns told us the food of the pilgrim should be plentiful yet simple. I can't say we always followed this advice, but it's good advice nonetheless. And here we are eating some pork, a beer, and some paella. When in Spain, do you like the Spaniards? Before arriving to Roncesvalles, I had given away my raincoat. So when it started to rain, as we crossed the Pyrenees, I ended up having to make a raincoat out of a trash bag. Here you can see the trash bag. It worked really good. Also a lot better than just getting wet. I felt like a bit of a fashion designer while cutting the holes out to make it. So the Camino Francés, you can see it as divided into 3 different parts. The first part's the physical part. When you climb the Pyrenees and you descend back down. Here's really where you get to know your body and identify what you need and don't need in your backpack. Here's where your bag gets a lot lighter. The next stage is when you arrive at the Meseta. This is the space between Burgos and León. Here it's very agricultural, so it's flat. There's lots of grains that are farmed here. It's a little bit boring, so that's why it's very more of the mental stage because it's very introspective. And finally, you get to Galicia. In Galicia, it's beautiful. It's a forest. There's a lot going on. This is like your reward after surviving the first 2 stages. Here we are seeing the cathedral in Burgos. This is also the start of the Meseta. A lot of pilgrims will take a taxi to León to jump over this whole phase. However, I think it's quite beautiful and worth doing. So what you're seeing here is a classic Meseta landscape. Here on the ground there's a little viper. This night we stayed in the ruins of the Sant Anton Hospital. This hospital treated people with the dancing plague. There was no power, so we took very cold showers and couldn't charge our phones. But in spite of that was probably one of my favorite places to stay. A friend of ours stayed here the night before. Told us that there was a wedding. That was a lot of fun for him. You just never know what you'll get on the Camino. They had a nice telescope to try to look for stars. Sadly, we were not able to figure out how to use it. You could see the candlelight breakfast that we had. The next day we stopped to visit a church in Castrojeriz. In Spain, the churches aren't all open, and the ones that are, usually they require a small donation to go in. This is different than the Camino Le Puy. So by all means, stop at the churches, give them a small contribution. It really does help them. For those of you curious to learn a little bit more about the dancing plague, from my understanding it was caused by some kind of fungus that they would eat, and it would cause a burning sensation, so I guess to cope with the burning, they would end up dancing. Yeah, it's a pretty wild part of history. This here's a 13-mile stretch. Only has 1 restaurant, this food truck. Apparently it's not even open every day. We just got lucky. This is why it's so important to always pack some snacks. And in that building right there, you can get your certificate that says that you're halfway through the Camino. As you can see, if you just take a taxi through the Meseca, you'll miss a lot of nice towns. Here's León, so here we're at the end of the Meseca. Here in León, I got a hotel room. I took a break, so I stayed here for 2 nights. It's okay to take a break every so often. Here's the León Lion, and there's a cathedral in León. Around midday, most of the restaurants in Spain will close. So if you're hungry, here's a cheat code. You can go to one of the bars and get yourself a drink. All the drinks in Spain come with a tapa. I'm not sure if you saw, but the tapa and the beer is only 350 euros. I'm grateful I don't live in Spain because that could be very dangerous. There you can see a fly fisherman. This is one of the albergues we stayed in. See the layout? When we arrived, they treated us to some tea. It's a nice home. An old pilgrim had set this up. In general, the best hosts are always ex-pilgrims. Here's Astorga. Every hour, those figurines come out and bang the bell. There you can see a house that Gaudí designed. Palacio de Gaudí. The cathedral's right there. And the 260-kilometer marker, we're getting close. Some bicyclers. Say hello to them. You can't be lost by moving forward. So it's worth noting that people do the Camino 3 different ways: walking, on bicycle, and on horseback. In reality, you only see people on bicycle and walking, but on your passport you can tick off which of the 3 ways you're arriving at Santiago. This is a Cruz de Fierro, or the Iron Cross. This is a very significant landmark on the Camino. Pilgrims will typically bring a memento to leave on the cross. They suggest you bring a stone from back home, and the idea of leaving this here is to symbolize your journey and to symbolize letting go. If you forget to bring a stone from home, just pick one up on your journey and leave it at the Iron Cross when you arrive. Here you can really start to appreciate just how beautiful Galicia is. There you can look back at all that you've walked so far. It's a very powerful experience. Also, as you can see, the sticks do come in very handy, especially as you're making it up and down those rolling hills. In the video, I talked about how humidity causes blisters. So whenever I'd arrive at a restaurant, I would try to take my socks off, both pairs, my liner and my merino wool sock, and just let them dry. Might be a little bit gross, but if it helps prevent blisters, oh well. Here's a pretty cool video I got. It's of a lizard eating a cricket. At this point in the Camino, I ran out of euros, and when I went to the A&M to withdraw some money, I noticed that my debit card had expired the month prior, so just make sure before you leave to double check the expiration date on your debit card. Most places take credit card, but if you could avoid this problem, just double check the expiration. As I was leaving Camporaya the next day, I noticed some music, so I decided to walk and explore. So you can see the party still going from the night before. This is why they call this the town of the parties. Now I had just under 200 kilometers left. So we're getting into very heavy wine country. You could see this vineyard, Bodegas Mauro, and there's a sign for a taxi. A lot of people do take taxis on the Camino, but not us. You can see some cyclers. We would typically leave pretty early in the morning, so you could see a lot of the restaurants are still closed. At the latest, we would leave around 7 a.m. The benefit in leaving early is that you get to avoid a lot of the heat. You can see some more of the Galicia landscape. So today that we walked to Osaveiro. To get to Osaveiro, you have to walk through a very steep mountain. Once you arrive there, you visit the church where the Eucharistic miracle happened. The priest who was working in the humble church of Osaveiro was having his doubts about the miracle of transfiguration. So on a winter storm, a local farmer climbed up the mountain to attend Mass. During the prayer of consecration, the bread turned into real flesh and the wine turned into real blood. This strengthened the faith of all those who were present and also marked Osaveiro as a sacred site on El Camino. In the church, you can see the Eucharistic cup and the chalice that were used during the ceremony. Also, this became the burial place for the priest and for the farmer. Here is a church. If you can make it, try to attend the Pilgrim's Mass. At the end, you'll get a stone like this one. The pilgrim who painted all of the markers along the Camino is also buried there, so you get that stone in commemorance of him. This here is the oldest chestnut tree on the Camino. There you can see the chestnuts. When they're ripe, they'll fall down and open up. You can see some notes that pilgrims had written on stones. You might have to get Google Translate out to read some of those. Here we are at the 100-kilometer marker. To get to Compostela, the Vatican asks that you walk at least 100 kilometers. They also ask that you get 2 stamps per day. What the Compostela is, it's a certificate that says that you completed the Camino. This means that most pilgrims will start at the town of Saria. It's about 115 kilometers from Santiago. This day ended up being my last day on the Camino. This morning I woke up and I decided that I would walk until I couldn't walk anymore. This meant that I walked throughout the night. It took me about 28 hours, but I was able to walk from Saria to Santiago. I really wanted to push myself the last day, so that's why I decided to do this. To be completely honest, I was very surprised I was able to make it. I'm not sure how much I recommend walking at night. It does get a little bit spooky. It also gets very cold, so if you're planning on walking throughout the night, just remember that you should have a thick jacket with you. You're also going to need a headlamp. Remember to always keep some spare batteries for your headlamp. You don't want that thing running out on you. So I got hungry. I stopped in a bar and I asked them if they had any food. They ended up giving me all their leftovers since they were close to closing time. Here I am with my ham and cheese sandwiches. Absolutely delicious. Here I am with less than 10 kilometers to go. You can see it's still very dark outside. Here I am when I arrived to get my Compostela. The first thing I did was take my shoes off, my socks off, put my sandals on. So about 8 in the morning. I think I was the 6th person in line for that day. The first person to complete the Camino de Santiago was King Alfonso II of Asturias. Keeping with that tradition, the first 8 pilgrims of each day are treated to a free lunch. You can see a lunch voucher that you get. This is a restaurant. It's supposed to be one of the nicer restaurants of Santiago. Here's a dinner. They treat you to some wine, bread. soup, some paella, and a tartara de Santiago. Here I am going to the Pilgrim's Mass. This is on my way out. I was very fortunate. The mass that I went to, they swung the botafumeiro. That's this container with incense. You'll see it at the end of the movie, The Way. After 3 days recovering, we kept going to Fisterra. Fisterra means fin de la tierra, so end of the earth. So the story of how the Camino got started, apparently there was a farmer who was tilling his field. While tilling it, he noticed that there were some stars shining through the ground. This is where Compostela comes from, Campo de Estrellas. The farmer began to dig, and there he found the body of St. James, and of the two men who carried him from Jerusalem, where he died, all the way to Santiago. The farmer quickly informed the king. The king was in Asturias. This was still in more controlled Spain. So this is how the king became the first pilgrim. This is a version of the story that I heard in Zabadica. Apparently, the two men who carried St. James's body from Jerusalem to Santiago put him in some barrels of rice to hide his body until they made it to Santiago. When these two men passed away, they were then buried along with St. James. I found the road to Fisterra to be one of the most enjoyable parts of the Camino. You have the option to go to Fisterra or to Murcia. Lots of pilgrims will decide to go to both. Due to time constraints, I was only able to go to Fisterra. If you want to go to both, what they suggest you do is that first you go to Fisterra, from Fisterra you go to Murcia. Many pilgrims who walk to Santiago might then do this portion on a bicycle. And once you arrive, you can then get a bus to take you back to Santiago. Here I took a quick video of what the bed linens look like. They're not the most comfortable. This is how you put them on your bed. You can see that it was still pretty foggy here. Here's a fork in the road between Fisterra and Murcia. Supposed to be a monster. There you can see some chestnuts that are ripe and ready to eat. You just have to cook them first. So after walking for about 2 months at sea is the first place that you actually get to see the ocean. And there it is. It really does leave you speechless. After walking 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 miles, finally get to the ocean. From Le Puy to the ocean. However, the Camino's not quite over. We still have to make it to Fisterra, and from Fisterra to the Faro, which is a very tip. Earlier in this video, I said how my favorite question to ask pilgrims was why they're doing the Camino. So as I got closer to Fisterra, I couldn't help but just reflect on that question to myself. It sounds a bit corny, but the person you are when you start and the person you are when you finish feels like two different people. Here in the ocean, you're supposed to stop and look for your own scallop shell. I didn't know we were supposed to do this, so I forgot. However, me and Olivier got separated about a week ago, so when he got there, he knew I'd forget, so he picked one up for me. Talk about real Camino friends. It says here's Fisterra. It's another beautiful place. I've got this cross-looked, overlooking the ocean. Here is the pilgrim's office. Here's where you stop to get your certificate saying that you arrived at Fisterra. And this is a Faro, 0 kilometers. You can see it's really foggy the day that I got there. But apparently when it's not, the view's incredible. See this artwork? Those faces looking into the ocean. And there it is. That's the Faro. You see all the pilgrims sitting there, reflecting on their Camino. Thinking back on their time, what they met, their experiences. Here it is. It's a nice place to sit down and reflect. Lastly, here's where people leave their shoes. Some will leave their walking sticks. Couldn't leave mine though, only had one pair. In the Camino, you hear over and over again, the real Camino doesn't begin till your journey does. Hopefully this video inspired some of you to go out and do the Camino. I didn't talk much about costs, but you're looking at spending maybe 40 euros per day. If you don't have 40 euros, you can always stay in the donativos. That's what they're there for. Thank you for watching, and buen camino.